Welcome back to the Fantasy Hockey Podcast. It's time for the weekend, and we are here with some good suggestions for you. We've got 0%ers, 1%ers. It's going to get deep here for us. Well, not necessarily emotionally deep, although if we talk about Bobrovsky, I may cry, I may shed a tear, and it will not be a tear of joy, unfortunately.
I'm pretty happy about it.
I don't, you're not supposed to say anything. Ignore Brandon. We're just going to jump into 10 takes. He can't cause more pain than he already has on me. Okay, so jumping into my first 10 take here. As Taylor Swift would say,
You need to calm down. You need to calm down.
I hate this intro to 10 takes.
it's the truth. People seriously need to relax. It's still so early in the season. The amount of messages I've seen, and not even messages, but just scouring Twitter, scouring different, like the subreddit, different forums, like just scouring different things. The amount of what's going on with Kucherov questions is ridiculous.
Or Patrick Kane. Or
Patrick
Gaudreau
Kane,
or anybody. I don't know. Anybody that isn't point per game or above.
If you remember a few episodes ago, I mentioned how like we'll get suggestions sometimes and someone's like, what's going on with this player? And then we look at their stats and their point per game, and all we can say is, what did you expect? What did you want? Like, what do you want them to do? And with Kucherov, it's somewhat similar where he actually, so last year, in his first 12 games, he got 12 points. So he went point per game in his first 12. This year, when everyone is saying what's going on with Kucherov, he has 11 and 12. Terrible.
Drop him.
I know how terrible. I can't believe the pain you must be going through by owning Nikita Kucherov, and that's not like throwing shade at anybody. It's more so just saying calm, like relax a little bit. And also when you're going through these things, like when you're asking these questions of what's going on with this player, what's going on with this player that I own, take a look at their numbers a little bit, and more than anything, also take a look at their numbers last year and just cross-reference. Look at averages and how they're doing, because I'd say more often than not with those top guys, when you're saying what's going on with this player, it's normally a lot of recency bias where they probably had a bad game, didn't factor into a game with a lot of goals or something like that, and you're letting that get the best of you, whereas instead, really, that player is doing just fine.
Yeah, I'm happy to have had Tyler Johnson and Palat last night rather than Kucherov, which is hilarious, but it is what it is. All right, my first take is, what do we think just in general about Colorado right now? I at least personally have talked a lot about how Colorado is a team with not a lot of depth. And boy, is that going to get tested here. They're losing both Rantanen and now Landeskog for relatively long term. Don't really know with Landeskog yet, but it's been said that it's longer than week to week, which is not a good thing to hear. And then Rantanen is week to week. So anytime it's above day to day, I'm immediately like, this person's never coming back. Of course they are, but
they are dead. I mean, that's what I did with Malkin. Malkin went down and I was like, that's it. We're never seeing Malkin again. Yep. And then he got tied up in that crypto scheme. I was like, yeah, we're definitely never seeing Malkin again.
He has a broken leg and he's jailbound. No. So now we've got Colorado. Looks like they got Kadri and Donskoy on the top line, top power play. Yeah. Yikes. I will say this. If you're looking to try to capitalize on, as best you can anyway, on what's going on over there, I don't think Donskoy is going to be there long term. I've mentioned this before. They have a lot of options for that top line role that they could use. Burakovsky and Comfer and Yost and all these other guys. And Donskoy, of course, is one of them. But I actually do think that Kadri could stay up there. I think he is more likely to fill the sort of Landeskog-ish role that might be harder for some of the other players on that team to do. So he's obviously more owned, so it's not going to be as easy to pick him up, but I do like him more than the other options that Colorado has right now. But beyond that, like, I get that McKinnon's McKinnon, and it doesn't really matter who he plays with. He's kind of like Crosby in that way. He's going to get points anyway. But I think it's going to be a struggle for Colorado, a team that already is like a little light in the depth department. Now is going to have to manage to find a way to win with one superstar player and a bunch of like whatevers.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm curious about is right now McKinnon has scored in every single game he's played so far. 100% consistency for Nathan McKinnon. And I'm very curious now what's going to happen. What Is he going to be able to continue that? And I think McKinnon's going to be tested more than anybody else. I know everyone's excited about Donskoy and the like.
And McCarr, of
I'm
course.
more excited, and McCarr and everything, but I'm very excited to see what McKinnon does with this. I'm very, very curious to see McKinnon back with bad line mates and see what happens. It's been a long time since we've seen this, and I'm curious to see how much of a step forward he's taken in these last few years in his development. And
Morbidly curious. I'm happy I don't own him right now, honestly.
I know. But I think I agree with you. I think Kadri is the one that matters. And then I think anything outside of that is very, very fluid. And they're going to go with whatever is hot and working at the moment. Okay, well, our third take here is... okay, this was going to make me cry a little bit. Florida has the second most goals against in the league.
Bobrovsky is the second best goalie choice.
Yep. You were saving that one.
I backed up from the
All
mic just for the
offseason.
effect. Felt good. Felt so nice.
Okay.
Here we go.
I think Bob can still figure it out. I do think he is still.
I think he's a buy low candidate, I will say. Yeah.
I think he's a buy low candidate, and he is a second half performer. But more than anything, in my opinion, what's going on with Florida defensively is they're getting used to a whole new system. They're getting completely used to something new. When you look at their actual defensive numbers, they're actually really good defensively. The issue is that the shots they get through are very, very dangerous shots, especially while Bobrovsky's in the net. So that's why you may see right now, I think, lower save percentages and not that many shots against, because they actually are good at limiting shots against. The problem is the shots that do get through are very, very dangerous ones right in the slot. And that makes Bobrovsky's life, honestly, a lot harder as well. And that's something that on top of it being just hard, it's something you also have to adjust to as a goaltender, getting used to where shots come from, how your defensemen are going to react. I could give you examples of how, for example, playing with a new team in beer league changes that for me as a goaltender. I don't, and it's tough to say if that really applies, but for example, on a 2-on-1, if I know my defender well, I know exactly how he's going to play that. If I don't know my defender well, I'm not exactly sure how he's going to play that. I know how he should play it, but I don't know how he's actually going to play it. And that affects how I make my decisions in the net. And granted, I'm not a professional netminder, but those things do impact the real game in the sense that he's getting used to it just as much as the defensemen are. And they're still doing well. They're still gaining points. They're still scoring goals. He has goal support. And so I'm not too worried about it. I think that he'll figure it out. But of course, I think at the end of the day, the question is that all those shots that are coming from the slot, can they start to prevent those? If they can't, I've got to say that I do think Bobrovsky can find a better form, but it's going to be a hard going just because those shots in the slot are always going to be harder to stop.
Yeah, the injuries haven't helped over there either. I know not a lot of people think about like Mike Matheson and stuff, but he's been relied on fairly often this season, and him being out, like, it hurts. That's why they've had to put Yandel in for more ice time than maybe they would have. And Yandel is not a good defensive defenseman. So, yeah. All right, my next one here is about Arizona. Just kind of, we've talked a lot actually about Arizona and how none of what's going on this team makes sense right now, except for the fact that they're not letting goals in. That's kind of what you expect from Arizona. They play sound defensively, but from the offensive standpoint, people are either way underperforming or they're way overperforming. There's not really any middle ground right now. And the guys that are overperforming are not the ones I would assume would start the season out overperforming. The guys, you'd think maybe Kessel would come out strong, trying to reinvigorate his kind of public image, if nothing else. And Keller trying to bounce back a little bit. But no, we're seeing the leading goal scorers over in Arizona are Connor Garland is the leading goal scorer with 6 goals, which you can imagine is not going to keep up considering he plays 12 minutes a game. Then we've got Christian Dvorak is actually the second highest goal scorer, tied with Nick Schmaltz, both with 4. And if you want to look at only the top line, the top line in quotes now, I guess, is right, and it's still the top line. Let's be honest. It's Kessel with 2, and then Keller and Stepan both have 1. They're just not getting it done. And I don't think that it's necessarily that they're playing super poorly, but they're certainly not making anything happen in a respectable fashion. They have obviously moved the lines around a little bit. We saw Stepan down a little bit, and we saw Dvorak up for a bit. Also didn't seem to help. So I assume that we're going to see more top 6 shuffling there. They did say earlier on the season, Schmaltz and Kessel was supposed to be a combo, which I don't think has really happened much. So maybe they'll go back to that. And the same kind of deals going on the power play, where it's the second unit with all these other dudes, Schmaltz and Garland, for example, featured on, as opposed to the top power play, which is the one that's making things happen. My original 10 take here is whether Arizona is actually good or not, and I still don't know that I have an answer. I think they're actually probably pretty good. It's just a matter of getting that top line working. They're 7-4-1 right now, for those of you that didn't know.
I think that the thing with Arizona that's interesting is they've always been really good defensively. We know their defensive scheme is really, really good, and they're good at keeping high danger opportunities away and making it easy on their goaltenders. The issue was always that shooting percentage being extremely low and not being able to put the puck in the back of the net. So it really would make sense if they can start scoring that they'd be good. So I'd say that they are, if they can keep it up. The issue is, like you said, I think the big thing is the people that are scoring are very unsustainable.
Yeah. The concern is you want to see the unsustainably low players recover before you see the unsustainably high players regress. If it goes the other way around, you're going to start seeing Arizona get shut out and all this weird stuff, and nobody wants that.
Yep, exactly. And for my next one here, I want to talk about Ovechkin, because I think this may be, and again, I feel like one of the pundits that say this all the time, and then you look silly later on in the season, but just as a discussion piece, this might be the year we see Ovechkin get dethroned from the Rocket Richard. Now, the reason for that is there's many people contending. I feel like in the past, every year, there's somebody that maybe can reach him. I mean, this year, there's a lot of people that could contend. There's David Pastrnak, there's Leon Draisaitl, there's John Carlson, there's Austin Matthews.
John Carlson, don't talk to me ever. He's not winning any Rocket Richard. No defenseman is winning a Rocket Richard again in the future of the NHL. It's never going to happen.
I'm extremely disappointed it took you that long to respond to John Carlson.
Has it even happened before?
Carlson,
I don't know if a defenseman's ever won Rocket Richard.
I
don't think so.
Clue, but I decided to throw it in to test your reaction speed. Anyways, the point I'm making here is that on one hand, there's a lot of players now that could compete with Ovechkin for the Rocket Richard. Contrary to prior years where Ovechkin kind of ran away with it, and then other players felt like they were always catching up. This year, it really does seem like there's people who could catch him. Now, the thing is, Ovechkin is the only one with as many goals as he does that has a sustainable shooting percentage. Everybody else has an unsustainable shooting percentage.
Yeah, that makes me like Ovechkin a lot more. His shooting pace right now is, one of the highest we've seen in years. If he keeps anywhere near this up, really. Moving into my next one, I feel like a player I'm hearing a lot about, and there's two players that I'm hearing a lot about, and I'm kind of confused. Actually, there's 3 players I hear a lot about that I'm kind of confused why there's a lot of hype about them coming back from injured reserve. The one I'm going to talk mostly about is Zach Hyman, but I'll also briefly mention Alex Tuch and Nate Schmidt. The latter two, the Vegas ones, Tuch may have some value, but you're talking about a third liner at this point. And the top 2 lines are actually really clicking this season. So I don't know that Vegas is going to roll that third line out with as much consistency as they did last season. So I'm not that high on Tuch. But he always seems to be streaky, and there's a decent chance he and Riley Smith will flip-flop, but I don't know that he's a guy you need to pick up and stash, because I feel like odds are you're going to wind up dropping him anyway, depending on your league depth. The other one, Nate Schmidt, I still think it's Theodore's game. The good news about Schmidt coming back is he's probably going to be able to take some of the tougher minutes away from Theodore and open him up offensively to play against weaker opponents. So it could be good news for Theodore, but I don't think it means much of anything for actually owning Nate Schmidt unless you're in like a really deep league. I just don't think he's going to be fantasy viable this season. Again, I briefly mentioned on the Unsustainable episode about how I think Theodore is in line for a good season, even though he's 7 or 8 games or whatever it is in a row without a point, because of how much he's been putting the puck on net and how he's been creating dangerous situations. So I still think that's going to hold true. I still think top power play is Theodore's, and that Schmidt probably is not even going to knock on that door unless something dramatic happens. So I'm really not seeing Schmidt's value. And then lastly here, the one I'm really going to talk about, and actually, you know what, I'm going to talk about him not much more than I talked about the other guys, but that's Zach Hyman. We're talking about a player that put up 41 points in 71 games last season. That's kind of who he is. He's a role player. He's not a point getter. He does things for the line, but doesn't necessarily involve himself with play directly, if that makes much sense. He's definitely the tertiary player as far as the playmaking actually goes. So Zach Hyman, there's really not a reason to be super hyped up about him. He might be a 50-point guy or 50-point pace guy with pretty bad peripherals because he doesn't shoot the puck that much. He'll get you some hits, but there's comparables out there that are in better positions than he is. So I don't really see why people are so interested in Hyman. I get he's sort of a multi-cat monster, but not quite there. And I think he's almost certainly better off just being a streamer option or a streamer position on your roster than a long-term hold.
Okay, the next one should be pretty easy. So I'm curious about this to get your thoughts because we've talked about this a little bit, and I kind of want this to be maybe the last time we talk about it, although it probably won't be, is what is actually Jonathan Huberdeau's ceiling? Because at this point, the way he's playing, and like we've said before, he's actually not necessarily sustainably low where he actually belongs in that category, but just in that he could actually be doing more than he is. What are we missing anything from Jonathan Huberdeau? Can he do more?
I don't think so anymore. I think when we mentioned that a couple of weeks ago when he's point per game and actually not quite up to a par, he's gotten there now. So he's pacing pretty close to last season, and I think that's more or less. I don't see him getting past like 95 seems like a ceiling for him to me. I could be wrong, but that's roughly where he's pacing right now. His shooting percentage has gone completely berserk, so he's starting to get a bunch of goals. So that's going to come down. But everything else looks okay. He's still a little over now, whereas before he was actually either in line or under. So I think we've seen roughly his ceiling last season, but it seems like that might be kind of closer to the standard for him, which would be nice. And that just kind of goes to show the offensive strength that Florida has in general. And I think that having Trocheck back when he comes back and having that second line be more dangerous, it'll be able to open up Huberdeau to do more himself. So yeah, I think we're seeing more or less his ceiling, in my opinion.
I'd agree with that. I think I agree with what you said on that. I think what we saw last year is probably his ceiling, but that's actually something that we can reasonably expect.
Yeah, or thereabouts. You know, I think above point per game, he was undervalued coming into the draft season this season. I feel like he was going. He should have been taken like a Kessel type player this season. Maybe not as many power play points, but that's like where he was pacing, where we both expect him to pace and around the point per game or above area, which is like Kessel numbers, right? And then Florida's power play was pretty lethal last season, so it wouldn't be crazy to expect him to get 30 plus power play points as well. But somehow he was still able to be gotten in like early 6th rounds or late 5th rounds in 12-man leagues, and that seems pretty late for what he offers. But yeah, I think you and I both have a couple shares of him just from drafting and whatever. So pretty stoked on Huberdeau going forward. All right. My next take is, how do we react to the Victor Hedman injury? We don't really know what's going on yet. It sounds a bit more optimistic than maybe it would have considering how quickly they put him on injured reserve. I think they really did that because they're only playing 2 games. They pretty much have ruled him out for the next one. So that essentially gives him the week. And you might as well put him on IR for the cap space or whatever for the roster position. So that's what they did. And as a result, I think that's why they pulled up Volkov, right? Gave him a shot, whatever. And now it looks like Sergachev is on top power play. Sergachev is having a pretty decent season so far, but I still don't really buy him. His peripherals are still, they're better than they were, but they're still not great. And he's really bolstered by that 3-assist game at the beginning, like one of the earlier games in the season. And that's kind of making his value look a little bit higher than it actually is. And I'm also not convinced he's gonna take or keep top power play. And even if it does, we don't know how long Hedman's out yet. So I wouldn't, even though there's not a lot of reacting to do because Sergachev is so highly owned and so is Shattenkirk, which would be the other option, I still wouldn't overreact to any capacity as far as what's going on in Tampa. And I think it's probably a net negative for everybody else on the team except for Sergachev. So it might be a little bit better for Shattenkirk also, because I assume he's going to get some more ice time. But I think it's worse for the forwards because you want Hedman as a top power play quarterback. So barring all that stuff, I really don't think there's a whole lot to say on this injury. I'm hoping people aren't trying to look for answers that aren't there because there's really not much to do here. Hedman will be back soon. There's there's no reason to be looking at any weird defenseman as like a way to don't go pick up Braden Colburn or anything strange like that.
Jan Ruda
Or Jan Ruda or anybody else.
Okay, my next one here is actually going to make Brandon very happy, and it's are the Isles for real? 7 straight wins now. They seem to seriously be clicking. The problem for me is they still don't really generate much offense.
Yep. They're basically
seems.
Arizona.
Yeah,
Arizona and the Islanders
They're
are very
basically-
close, like similar style-wise.
yeah. They're pretty much like, but so does that mean that Arizona is Islanders West, or are the Islanders Arizona East?
I think it would be Islanders or Arizona East. Arizona's been doing this for a while. The Islanders just started
true.
last season.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, the difference is the Islanders do it and also somehow like fart their way into winning games, and Arizona does it and then just is boring half the time.
I mean, their goaltending has been fantastic. What I'm curious to see is if they can get I think if they can get Barzal going, I would argue they are for real.
It's hard because the wingers, I feel like they have like I would say an Edmonton problem, but it's more than that because they don't have centers either. They don't really have a lot to bolster Barzal. They just have kind of hard to play against guys that are able to, like Ross Johnson gets a goal. And it's just because they're playing with this like ferocity in the offensive zone when they get there. I don't know how sustainable something like that is. Obviously, Ross Johnson's not a goal scorer, and I'm not saying that that line even getting goals is sustainable, but I'm saying their line, like the Cizikas line when he's playing, it's a third line. It is by definition a third line, but it's like very difficult to play against, and they put up a like respectable amount of points. And I think that's might be what Arizona's lacking to be like the Islanders style of getting production from like the real down there lines. I don't know if the Islanders can keep this up. Although we've talked about this for 95 games in a row now, or whatever it is, since they started doing well. So it's really hard to say what'll happen going forward. But I mean, Mitch Korn and Barry Trotz know what they're doing defensively. There's just no doubt about that. And net. The weird thing is, right? No Nick Schmaltz, but I think 2 more wins. They'll have like not a record. It might be a record actually. The last time they had 8 wins in a row was in 82. So it's been a while. Okay, so my last one, because we can't end 10 takes without talking about Dallas every single week, is about Dallas. What I do like to see here is that they're back to the Ben Sagan Radulov line, and they have Gurianov, Hintz, and Pavelski as the second line. These are the correct lines, in my opinion. I get that it doesn't seem to matter what's going on. Dallas has struggled other than in their game where they put up 6 or 7 goals or whatever it was, and Radulov got like 45 hat tricks or whatever happened. Who knows? Everybody that played against Radulov that game was like, this is dumb and I hate it. And everybody that had Radulov is like, finally. But of course, for me, it's mostly dumb and I hate it. But Dallas, I do like these lines. I hope they let them stick for a number of games and see if they can build something back up, get Sagan and Radulov going again, see what can happen with Ben before they shake things up again. One thing I didn't like to see is they're running a 2 defenseman top power play. I don't understand that at all. They have enough people to play that 4th spot on the top power play, whether it be Hintz or Pavelski or Perry even, to that. There's no reason Lindell should be there. He's not going to be adding to that power play. I can't remember where we saw this, but there's been research done on, I think it might have been Charting Hockey, about the effectiveness of 2 defensemen top power plays, and it's not effective. It just is just not. So stop it. You've got most of it right, and now you're screwing up the power play. Just get it all together, and then we'll see what happens. And then, for that 4th slot, you've got Pavelski, Hintz, or Perry to throw in and out of it. And just leave Ben, Sagan, and Radulov top power play, and something should work. And Klingberg.
Okay, now moving into the weekend pickup suggestions. Let's talk first about teams with good matchups, bad matchups, and teams that play off nights. So the teams with the good matchups are going to be St. Louis, Vancouver, and Calgary. And that's honestly a mix of the teams that they play. And also, because there's so many back-to-backs this weekend, some of those get advantages in terms of getting a tire team while they're rested. Teams with bad matchups are going to be New Jersey, Columbus, and the New York Islanders. They do not have easy schedules this weekend. Very tough teams to play against. And the teams that play both off days, so that'll be Friday and Sunday, are Anaheim and Washington. So that takes us into the suggestions kind of based on that knowledge now. And the first one is going to be, for me, Sammy Blais, left wing, right wing, 20%. with Tarasenko out, I like his opportunities, and the fact that he has such a good floor from a Bangers perspective is good. And St. Louis, to me, has the easiest schedule of the weekend. And so I think that if Sammy Blais is available in your league and you're in a Bangers league, he's a pretty good ad.
Yeah. St. Louis is playing Columbus and Minnesota, if you're wondering.
Yeah. Very easy.
The problem with this weekend is that it sucks, but so every team except for 3 plays on Saturday, which is just scheduling nightmare for fantasy. And like you mentioned, the only 2 teams playing off nights are Anaheim and Washington, and Anaheim is more interesting because they actually have a lot of players that are available in at least 50% of leagues. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Washington, not so much. But you know what? I'm going to start with I have like everybody on Anaheim listed, but I'm going to start with Washington. I do have a Washington recommendation, and this is assuming that Kuznetsov is either ruled out or you're in a deep enough league that it matters regardless. Lars Eller, center, 11% owned. He's going to be slotting into that second center line, assuming Kuznetsov stays out. If not, I actually think he might be worth rostering in certain leagues anyway. But if he does get that second line viability, especially if he winds up getting second line top power play, he could be a steal this weekend.
Okay, and then my next one here is going to be from Anaheim, who plays the 2 off nights. And this one is solely for Bangers League. So this is if you need blocks or hits and just a stream for those peripherals. And that's going to be Corbinian Holzer. I love that first name, Corbinian.
This is a strong name.
Star Wars needs. It is. It's a very strong name.
I think his nickname is Corby.
Quentin is strong. Quentin is very like if you came up to me and introduced yourself as Quentin, I may run away. Corbinian, I'd kneel at your feet and pledge my allegiance to you. So Corbinian Holzer, defenseman for 1% owned on Anaheim. He is a really good option for blocks. He's not super consistent with hits, to be honest. I'd say I'd expect like 1 or 2 out of him, but he does get the occasional like 5-hit game. And he shoots a little bit, like 1 or 2 shots a game, somewhere around there. So he's a pretty good peripheral option. I wouldn't do it for points, but at 1% in deep leagues, if he just needs a streamer option for peripherals, he's a pretty good one given that there's 2 off nights.
Yep. All right, my next one is going to be a Sunday stream. So on Sunday, there's really very, very few games being played. There's only 2 games on Sunday. So this is going to be where it's going to be hard to really maximize roster starts. You may not even be able to do it. But Milan Lucic, left wing, 9%. He actually got dropped down to the 4th line. So this is not a points or shots recommendation. This is a hits and PIMS recommendation. Against the Caps, there's always a chance of a fight with a guy like Tom Wilson. So that's basically what I'm going for. I'm looking for a Lucic, Tom Wilson engagement, and then possibly some hits to try to round out my week. That's kind of the only opportunity in which I'd take him. If you're not in a Bangers league, just ignore this. It just doesn't matter.
At the beginning of the season, they asked the Vancouver Canucks asked Thatcher Demko who he thought would be the breakout candidate of the season for the Canucks. And Thatcher Demko looked at the reporter and very seriously said Tim Shaler. All the reporters around started laughing, and apparently Thatcher Demko got a little bit angry and was like, "What are you talking about?" I love he has a nickname, I forget what it is, but he called out Tim Shaler to be the bounce back candidate. And Tim Shaler honestly has not had a bad campaign, and in these last few weeks, he's center left wing. He hasn't been terrible, and he's gotten some points. And so for a team that has a pretty easy matchup, has been scoring a lot of goals, I actually like Tim Shaler as kind of a gamble on points this weekend. 1% owned. So of course, very deep leagues, for example, if you're in a 12 person with very deep rosters, or just like a 16 team, something like that, like Tim Shaler to me is a really good option just for points alone.
That's a weird one.
Yeah, out of left field. I'm using Thatcher Demko as my shield. If he sucks, it's not my fault. It's Thatcher Demko's.
Fair enough. All right, my next one is, this is going to be for Friday streams. I'm assuming you're not going to be able to hold on to these guys, or rather, it doesn't matter because they don't play again. But the idea of a Friday and then Sunday swap, if you have availability on Sunday or you want to take a backup goalie on Saturday or whatever, is either Tyler Johnson, center left wing, right wing, 27%, or Andre Palat, left wing, 21%. So they're both pretty low owned. They're both playing on exciting lines right now. I think Johnson is the one playing with Point, and then we've got Palat playing with Stamkos and Kucherov, I think is the latest. I don't know. They're shuffling lines so often, it's hard to keep up. But both of them are in pretty good positions, and Palat also has that top power play deployment. He got a 3-point, actually both of them had 3-point games in that big game against New Jersey. Obviously don't expect something like that, and they don't have the easiest matchup against the Islanders, but they do play that Friday game, and they're both relatively low owned for the upside that they have. So worth a look anyway.
My last one here isn't really a pick up this person immediately, I'm just putting this guy on your radar for you. And that's Adam Boquist in Chicago, defenseman, 1% owned. Shocking, he's 1%. I don't know
People
why
are
he's
jumping
1%.
the gun.
I guess so. But he is a very, very interesting option. That Chicago power play could be lethal. It should and could be lethal given who's on it. And on top of that, if he gets good 5-on-5 deployment, he could have pretty good line mates. So if he takes over that top power play from Gustafsson and it works, I could see Boquist having a fantastic season. So he's someone that I'm putting on your radar extremely, extremely early, where maybe in a few weeks you'll say, oh yeah, that's the guy Gamby said. Just because, you know, he's taken off and you'll know before everybody else. So right now I'm giving you the opportunity to watch him, pay attention, and potentially grab him before anybody else in your league. I'm not saying jump the gun and pick him up now unless you're in a deeper league or it's a keeper league, that sort of thing, where it's like, okay, I have an empty spot. For example, for me, Eric Chernak's injured. So I said, why not? I'll pick up I'll pick up Adam Boquist and see what happens. That's the situation where you want to grab him. Otherwise, honestly, just kind of sit on the sidelines and just be watching and have your hand on the trigger just ready if anything actually does happen.
I don't mind the idea of picking him up. If you see him play on Saturday against LA and he gets top power play deployment, he's a good streamer option. Again, there's only good 2 games on Sunday, so there's not a lot of opportunity. If he's getting top power play, he's going to be one of the best streamer options available for Sunday, even if he doesn't pan out.
And for DFS as well, he's going to be a fantastic option.
Assuming he gets top power play.
Yes.
All right.
Against LA.
My last one is everybody on Anaheim. Everybody. They get to play a tired Chicago, which is going to be just hilarious to start with. But a lot of good players on this team are still below 50% ownership. You've got Ryan Getzlaf, who's at 45%. You've got Jacob Silverberg, who we've talked about a lot on this show. He's right wing, 46%. Adam Henrique, center, 29%. These are in order, by the way. This is the order that I picked them up if I needed a player. Getzlaf, then Silverberg, just because lately Getzlaf's been really all over the place. Then Henrique, then Max Comtois is an option, especially in banger leagues, left wing 4%, so super low. And then lastly here, an interesting possible option for super, super deep leagues, and I'm reinforcing this means super deep leagues, is Josh Mahura, D 0% owned. Yes, I get that. I'm not trying to react to the fact that he got 3 assists in his first game. I know that's not what to expect considering he only was played about 16 and a half minutes or whatever it was. But he is getting a look on the power play. Not the top power play, but it's hard to say what the top power play is over there these days. And he's on one of the units by himself. So that alone makes me a little bit more interested in him. I do have him in my Dynasty League, so I'm a little bit biased here. But he scored some points last time he got called up. And if you're in a really, really deep league and you're looking for just anybody, he'll get you 2 games. And that's really hard to come by this weekend.
So there you go. That is your weekend preview. Go listen to You Need to Calm Down by Taylor Swift and stop dropping people that you shouldn't be dropping. And we will catch you on Monday for the week preview. And also, stay tuned for more Hot Hands and Bust Watch videos as they come out.
Yep. Thanks for listening.